I attended my brother's baby shower. His wife said, "The baby's moving, touch it." I'm an obstetrician. I placed my hand and immediately pulled my wife aside. "Call an ambulance." "Now." "What? Why? Didn't you notice when you touched it?" "That's not." I collapsed as I heard my own words. My name is Dr. Michael Chen, and I'm a board-certified obstetrician with 15 years of experience. I've delivered over 3,000 babies, handled countless high-risk pregnancies, and seen just about every complication you can imagine. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened at my brother's baby shower 6 months ago. My brother David is 2 years younger than me, and we've always been close despite taking very different paths in life. While I went to medical school and built a practice, David became a successful software engineer. He's always been the more trusting one between us, sometimes to a fault. When he married Jessica 3 years ago, I had my reservations, but I kept them to myself. She seemed nice enough, though something about her always felt off to me. Maybe it was the way she would change the subject whenever anyone asked about her family or her past. Maybe it was how she seemed to have an answer for everything, even when the questions were about things she shouldn't have known. The baby shower was held at their house in the suburbs, a beautiful colonial they'd bought when Jessica announced her pregnancy. About 30 people were there, mostly David's friends and colleagues, a few neighbors, and some relatives from both sides. Jessica's family was notably absent, which she explained by saying they lived too far away to travel. I remember thinking that was odd since she'd never mentioned them living far away before, but I didn't press the issue. My wife Sarah and I arrived around 2 in the afternoon. The house was decorated with blue and white balloons, and there was an impressive spread of food. Jessica looked radiant in a flowing blue dress that accentuated her obviously pregnant belly. She was about 7 months along, according to David, and glowing with that pregnancy radiance that expectant mothers often have. "Michael." "Sarah." David called out as we entered. "So glad you could make it. Jess has been looking forward to showing off the baby bump to the expert." Jessica laughed and walked over to us, her hand resting on her belly. "David's told everyone you're the best obstetrician in the city. I've been dying to get your professional opinion on how everything's going." I smiled and congratulated her on the pregnancy. She looked healthy, and her belly certainly looked appropriately sized for 7 months. We made small talk about due dates and preparations, and I found myself relaxing. Maybe my earlier reservations about Jessica had been unfounded. The afternoon progressed normally. We played the typical baby shower games, opened presents, and everyone cooed over the tiny clothes and baby gear. Jessica was the center of attention, graciously accepting congratulations and advice from the other guests. She had this way of making everyone feel included, asking about their own children and families. Around 4 o'clock, as the party was winding down, Jessica was sitting on the couch opening the last few gifts. She suddenly gasped and put her hand on her belly. "Oh my God, he's really active today," she exclaimed, drawing everyone's attention. "He's been kicking up a storm all afternoon, but this is something else." Several of the women gathered around, and Jessica invited them to feel the baby move. I watched as they each placed their hands on her belly, their faces lighting up with wonder as they felt what they believed to be the baby's movements. "Michael, you have to feel this," Jessica called out to me. "Your nephew is going to be a soccer player." I approached somewhat reluctantly. As a professional, I typically don't mix my medical expertise with family social situations. But everyone was watching, and I didn't want to seem standoffish. Sarah was already standing next to Jessica, having just felt the baby move herself. "The baby's moving, touch it," Jessica said, guiding my hand to her belly. The moment my palm made contact with her abdomen, I knew something was terribly wrong. What I felt wasn't the normal movement of a fetus at 7 months gestation. It was wrong in every possible way. The movement was too superficial, lacking the deep internal pressure of actual fetal movement. The rhythm was mechanical rather than organic, and most importantly, the location and pattern were completely inconsistent with how a real baby moves at that stage of pregnancy. I kept my hand there for a few more seconds, trying to process what I was feeling. My medical training kicked in, and I began mentally cataloging the possibilities. What I was feeling could only be explained by one thing, and it made my blood run cold. I managed to keep my expression neutral as I stepped back and smiled at Jessica. "Very active indeed," I said, but my mind was racing. I caught Sarah's eye and nodded toward the kitchen. "Sarah, could you help me get something from the car?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah looked confused but followed me toward the kitchen. Once we were out of earshot of the other guests, I grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "Call an ambulance." "Now," I whispered urgently. "What? Why?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with concern. "Didn't you notice when you touched it?" "That's not," I started to say, but the words caught in my throat. The realization of what I was about to say, what it meant for David, what it meant for everyone here, hit me like a physical blow. I collapsed against the kitchen counter, my legs suddenly weak. Sarah caught my arm, her face filled with alarm. "Michael, what's wrong? You're scaring me." I looked at her, then back toward the living room where I could hear Jessica's laughter mixing with the other guests. My brother's voice carried over the sounds of the party, happy and excited about his upcoming fatherhood. "That's not a baby moving," I finally managed to whisper. What I felt. "Sarah, that's not fetal movement. That's something else entirely." Sarah's face went pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean Jessica isn't pregnant. At least, not with a viable pregnancy." What I felt was consistent with a pseudocyesis, but that doesn't explain the movement. The only thing that could explain what I felt is. I paused, not wanting to say the words aloud. Michael, you're really frightening me. What did you feel? I felt what seemed like deliberate manipulation of something inside her abdomen. Something that was designed to mimic fetal movement but wasn't. Sarah, I think Jessica has been faking this entire pregnancy. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. Sarah stared at me, her mouth open in shock. That's impossible, she whispered. Look at her. She's obviously pregnant. Her belly, her whole body has changed. Prosthetics, I said grimly. Very sophisticated ones. What I felt was likely some kind of mechanical device designed to simulate fetal movement. The positioning was wrong, the timing was wrong, everything about it was wrong. But why would she do that? I thought about David's excitement over the past 7 months, his plans for the nursery, his talks about being a father. I thought about the baby shower gifts, the congratulations, the way Jessica had been the center of attention for months. I don't know, I said, but we need to call for help. If I'm right, Jessica is having some kind of psychological episode, and she needs immediate medical attention. Sarah was already reaching for her phone when we heard Jessica's voice from the living room, louder now, more excited. Oh my God, something's wrong, Jessica cried out. The baby. Something's happening. Sarah and I rushed back to the living room to find Jessica doubled over on the couch, her hands clutching her belly. The other guests were gathered around her, their faces filled with concern. The baby stopped moving suddenly, Jessica gasped. And now I'm having pain. Sharp pain. David was kneeling beside her, his face white with panic. Should we call 911? I already did, Sarah said, holding up her phone. They're on their way. I approached Jessica carefully. As a doctor, I had a duty to help, but I also knew what I had discovered. I needed to be very careful about how I handled this situation. Jessica, I need you to try to stay calm, I said in my most professional voice. Can you describe the pain? Where is it located? It's all over, she said, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. The baby was moving so much, and then nothing. Complete stillness. And now this pain. I looked at her carefully. She was a good actress, I had to give her that. But I could see the signs now that I knew what to look for. The way her hands moved over her belly was wrong. The way she was breathing didn't match someone experiencing genuine pregnancy complications. The ambulance arrived within minutes, and the EMTs rushed in with their equipment. I identified myself as a physician and briefly explained the situation as I understood it, though I didn't mention my suspicions about the fake pregnancy. As the EMTs began their assessment, I pulled David aside. David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, Michael. What is it? Has Jessica been seeing an obstetrician regularly throughout this pregnancy? David nodded. Yes, Dr. Rodriguez downtown. She's been going to all her appointments. Have you gone with her to any of these appointments? David's face showed confusion. Well, no. Jessica said she preferred to go alone, that it was a bonding experience with the baby. She always came back with updates and pictures from the ultrasounds. My heart sank. David, have you ever actually seen any of these ultrasound images? Of course. Jessica shows them to me every time. We have them on the refrigerator. I knew what I would find, but I had to ask. Can you show me one of them? David looked puzzled by my urgency, but he led me to the kitchen. On the refrigerator, held up by magnets, were several ultrasound images. I examined them carefully, and my worst fears were confirmed. David, I said gently, these images are fake. They're generic ultrasound photos you can find online. Look at the dates, they're all from the same day, just with different weeks written on them. David stared at the images, his face cycling through confusion, denial, and finally, a terrible understanding. What are you saying, Michael? I'm saying Jessica has been lying to you. She's not pregnant. She's been using prosthetics to fake the pregnancy, and what I felt earlier was some kind of mechanical device designed to simulate fetal movement. David's face went through several emotions at once. Disbelief, anger, confusion, and finally, a terrible kind of clarity. But why would she do that? He whispered. Before I could answer, one of the EMTs called out from the living room. Doctor, we need you over here. I rushed back to find the EMTs looking confused. Jessica was still on the couch, but something had changed. Her belly looked different somehow, less round, more artificial. Ma'am, we need to examine you properly, one of the EMTs was saying. Can you lie down flat so we can assess the situation? No, Jessica said sharply. I need to stay sitting up. The baby. The position. I looked at the EMT and nodded slightly. He understood immediately. Between the two of us, we had decades of experience with pregnant women in distress. We knew what normal pregnancy emergencies looked like, and this wasn't it. Jessica, I said firmly, as a doctor, I need to examine you. Right now. No, she said, her voice rising. You're not my doctor. I want to go to the hospital. I want Dr. Rodriguez. Jessica, I said more gently, Dr. Rodriguez doesn't exist, does he? The room went completely silent. Every eye was on Jessica, and I could see the exact moment when she realized her deception was over. Her face changed, the mask slipping away to reveal something desperate and frightened underneath. She started, then stopped. Her hands moved to her belly, and I could see her struggling with whether to continue the charade or confess. Jessica, please, David said, his voice breaking. Just tell me the truth. Are you pregnant? The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, Jessica's hands moved to her belly, and she began to carefully remove what turned out to be an incredibly sophisticated prosthetic pregnancy belly system. The device came apart in sections, an outer shell that had been secured with medical-grade adhesive, and an inner mechanical component that had created the artificial movement. The room erupted in shocked gasps and exclamations. David stared at the fake belly in Jessica's hands, his face a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. Why? He whispered. Why would you do this to me? Jessica's composure finally cracked completely. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the room full of people staring at her in shock and disgust. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I wanted to make you happy. I wanted to give you what you wanted most. By lying to me for 7 months? David's voice was rising. By making me believe I was going to be a father? By letting me plan for a child that doesn't exist? I thought maybe I would get pregnant for real, Jessica said desperately. I thought if I just had more time, if I could make it seem real, maybe it would become real. I stepped forward, my medical training taking over. Jessica, this is a serious psychological condition. You need help, professional help. What you've done here isn't just a lie, it's a complex delusion that has affected everyone in this room. Get out, David said quietly. Get out of my house. Now. David, please, Jessica begged. I love you. I just wanted to make you happy. You wanted to make me happy by lying to me? By letting me plan for a child that doesn't exist? By letting me tell everyone I know that I'm going to be a father? David's voice was getting louder with each word. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? The other guests were beginning to leave, murmuring among themselves about what they had just witnessed. I could see the shock and embarrassment on their faces. Some of them had given expensive gifts, offered advice, shared their own pregnancy stories with Jessica. I think everyone should go, I said quietly. David, Jessica needs medical attention. The EMTs should take her to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. No, Jessica said, backing away from the EMTs. I'm fine. I just made a mistake. I'll leave, I'll go stay with friends. I don't need to go to the hospital. But it was too late for that. The EMTs had already called for backup, and within minutes, a crisis intervention team arrived. After a brief consultation, they determined that Jessica needed to be taken to the hospital for evaluation. As they were preparing to take her away, Jessica looked at David one last time. I really do love you, she said. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know that everything I felt for you was real. The pregnancy was fake, but my love for you wasn't. David didn't respond. He just stared at her with a mixture of pain and disgust that I had never seen on my brother's face before. After Jessica was taken away, the house fell silent except for David, Sarah, and me. We stood in the living room, surrounded by baby shower decorations and unopened gifts, trying to process what had just happened. 7 months, David said finally. 7 months of lies. 7 months of planning for a child that was never going to exist. David, I'm so sorry, I said. I should have said something earlier. I had a feeling something was off about Jessica, but I never imagined anything like this. You couldn't have known, David said, sinking into his chair. How could anyone have known? Who fakes a pregnancy for 7 months? Who does that to someone they claim to love? Over the next few days, the full extent of Jessica's deception became clear. When David went through her things, he found an entire elaborate setup in their bedroom closet. Multiple prosthetic pregnancy bellies in different sizes, designed to simulate different stages of pregnancy. The mechanical device I had felt was a sophisticated piece of equipment that could be programmed to create different types of movement patterns. She had created fake ultrasound images using software she had downloaded online. She had researched pregnancy symptoms extensively and had been carefully mimicking them for months. She had even been taking prenatal vitamins and had modified her diet to make the deception more convincing. The most chilling discovery was a detailed schedule showing how she had managed the physical deception. She had been applying and removing the prosthetic system daily, using it only when David was home or when they were in public together. During private moments, she had claimed fatigue or nausea to avoid situations where the deception might be discovered. The most chilling discovery was a notebook where she had detailed her entire plan. She had been tracking David's reactions to her fake pregnancy, noting what made him happiest, what made him most excited. She had planned to fake pregnancy complications at around 8 months, claiming that stress had caused early labor, then stage a miscarriage at the hospital. But as the months went on, she had become more and more invested in the lie. She had started to believe that somehow, some way, she would actually become pregnant and make the lie become truth. When that didn't happen, she had begun planning more elaborate deceptions, including potentially trying to obtain someone else's baby to present as her own. The psychological evaluation revealed that Jessica had been suffering from pseudopsoriasis, a condition where a person believes they are pregnant when they are not, combined with a severe personality disorder that made her capable of elaborate deceptions. The doctors explained that her behavior was likely the result of a deep-seated fear of abandonment and an overwhelming need to please others, even at the cost of her own mental health. What made Jessica's case particularly complex was the discovery of her elaborate preparation and planning. The psychiatrist assigned to her case, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, shared some details with us that painted a disturbing picture of premeditation and psychological manipulation. Jessica didn't just wake up one day and decide to fake a pregnancy, Dr. Martinez explained to David and me during one of our meetings. This was a carefully orchestrated deception that she had been planning for months before she even announced the pregnancy. According to Dr. Martinez, Jessica had been researching pregnancy symptoms and behaviors for over a year. She had joined online pregnancy forums under fake names, studied medical websites, and even attended prenatal classes at a community center in another town. She had been preparing herself to become the perfect pregnant woman. She had studied everything, Dr. Martinez continued. Morning sickness patterns, food cravings, mood swings, physical changes. She had even researched the psychological effects of pregnancy on partners, learning what behaviors and symptoms would be most convincing to David. The most disturbing revelation was that Jessica had been stealing pregnancy test strips from a medical supply company where she had briefly worked as a temp. She had been using these to create fake positive pregnancy tests, storing them in her purse and using them when David wasn't looking. She showed me the test, David said, his voice hollow. She was so excited, so happy. She cried when she showed me those 2 pink lines. How do you fake tears of joy over something that doesn't exist? Dr. Martinez explained that Jessica's ability to fake genuine emotions was part of her psychological condition. She had developed such an elaborate fantasy that she had begun to believe parts of it herself. The line between deception and delusion had become blurred. In her mind, she was giving David what he wanted most, Dr. Martinez said. She had convinced herself that the temporary deception would lead to real happiness for both of them. She believed that if she could just maintain the lie long enough, somehow it would become true. The investigation into Jessica's past revealed even more disturbing details. Her previous relationship had ended when her boyfriend discovered that she had been lying about having a terminal illness. Before that, she had been fired from a job for falsifying her educational credentials. The pattern of elaborate deceptions went back years. She's what we call a pathological liar, Dr. Martinez explained. But it's not just lying for personal gain. She creates these elaborate fantasies because she has a deep-seated belief that she's not worthy of love as she really is. She thinks she needs to be someone else, someone better, to be loved. David struggled with this explanation. But I loved her, he said. I loved her before she told me she was pregnant. I would have been happy with her even if we never had children. She didn't need to do this. That's the tragedy of her condition, Dr. Martinez replied. She couldn't believe that she was worthy of love without creating these elaborate deceptions. Her fear of abandonment was so strong that she was willing to risk everything to avoid facing the possibility of rejection. The psychological evaluation also revealed that Jessica had been experiencing what's known as Kuvad syndrome in reverse. Instead of a male partner experiencing pregnancy symptoms, Jessica had been carefully inducing them in herself. She had been taking medications that would cause nausea, changing her diet to cause food aversions, and even using hormonal supplements to mimic some of the physical changes of pregnancy. She was literally making herself sick to maintain the deception, Dr. Martinez explained. She was so committed to the lie that she was willing to harm her own body to make it seem real. This revelation hit David particularly hard. He had been so concerned about Jessica's pregnancy symptoms, had taken care of her during her morning sickness, had worried about her health and well-being. To learn that she had been deliberately making herself sick was almost more than he could bear. I held her hair while she threw up, he told me one night. I brought her crackers and ginger ale. I worried about her nutrition, about whether she was getting enough vitamins for the baby. And the whole time, she was making herself sick on purpose. The investigation also uncovered the extent of Jessica's financial deception. She had been secretly taking money from their joint savings account to pay for the prosthetic pregnancy equipment and the various medical supplies she had been using. She had also been charging baby-related expenses to credit cards that David didn't know about. She had spent over $8,000 on this deception, David's lawyer, James Patterson, explained to us. Prosthetic equipment, medical supplies, even renting a small office space monthly to maintain the illusion of doctor visits. The fake doctor's office was perhaps the most elaborate part of the deception. Jessica had rented a small office space and had it decorated to look like a medical facility. She had hired an actor to play the role of Dr. Rodriguez, the obstetrician she claimed to be seeing. The appointments were elaborate theatrical productions designed to maintain the illusion. She had thought of everything, Patterson continued. She had fake medical forms, fake insurance claims, even fake parking receipts from the medical building. If you had asked David for proof of her medical care, he could have shown you a paper trail that looked completely legitimate. The psychological evaluation continued for months, and more details emerged about Jessica's condition. She had been diagnosed with what's known as factitious disorder, a condition where someone deliberately produces or feigns physical or psychological symptoms in order to assume the role of a patient. It's different from malingering, Dr. Martinez explained, because the person isn't doing it for external rewards like money or avoiding work. They're doing it because they have a psychological need to be in the patient role, to receive care and attention. In Jessica's case, the factitious disorder had evolved into something more complex. She wasn't just seeking medical attention for herself, she was seeking the attention and care that comes with being an expectant mother. She wanted to experience the special treatment, the excitement, the planning and preparation that surrounds pregnancy. She was addicted to the positive attention, Dr. Martinez said. Every time someone congratulated her on the pregnancy, every time someone asked about the baby, every time someone offered to help her or give her advice, she got a psychological reward. She became addicted to being the center of attention. The most heartbreaking aspect of the psychological evaluation was learning about Jessica's own childhood. She had grown up in a family where love was conditional, where she had to earn attention through achievement or by creating drama. Her parents had divorced when she was young, and she had spent her childhood trying to get their attention by creating problems that would force them to focus on her. She learned early that being sick or having problems was a way to get love and attention, Dr. Martinez explained. This pattern followed her into adulthood, where she continued to create elaborate problems as a way to get the care and attention she craved. Understanding Jessica's psychology didn't make David feel any better about what she had done to him. If anything, it made him angrier. "So she destroyed my life because she had a bad childhood?" he asked. "She made me believe I was going to be a father because her parents didn't love her enough?" "It's not that simple," Dr. Martinez replied. "Her condition doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps explain it. She wasn't setting out to hurt you. In her mind, she was trying to create the perfect family that she never had." The psychological evaluation also revealed that Jessica had been planning to fake a miscarriage, but as the months went on, she had become increasingly desperate to find a way to make the pregnancy real. She had been researching fertility treatments, and had even considered trying to adopt a baby illegally to present as her own. She had contacted several adoption agencies under false pretenses, Dr. Martinez explained. She had been trying to find a baby that would be available around her supposed due date. She was planning to claim that she had given birth prematurely and present the adopted baby as her own. This revelation was perhaps the most chilling of all. Jessica hadn't just been lying about being pregnant, she had been planning to obtain an actual baby to maintain the deception. The implications were staggering. "She could have kidnapped someone's child," David said, his voice shaking. "She could have stolen a baby to maintain her lie. How far was she willing to go?" According to Dr. Martinez, there was no limit to how far Jessica might have gone. Her psychological condition had been escalating, and she had been becoming increasingly disconnected from reality. The fake pregnancy had become more real to her than her actual life. She was living in a fantasy world, Dr. Martinez explained. In her mind, she was pregnant, she was going to have a baby, and she was going to be a mother. The fact that none of it was real didn't matter to her anymore. The psychological evaluation concluded that Jessica was a danger to herself and others, and she was committed to a long-term treatment facility. She would need years of therapy to address the underlying psychological issues that had led to her elaborate deception. "She's not a bad person," Dr. Martinez told us. "She's a very sick person who did a terrible thing. But with treatment, there's hope that she can learn to form healthy relationships based on truth rather than deception." David wasn't interested in Jessica's potential for recovery. He was focused on his own healing, on finding a way to move forward after such a devastating betrayal. The psychological evaluation had given him answers about why Jessica had done what she did, but it hadn't made the pain any less acute. David filed for divorce immediately. The marriage was annulled on the grounds of fraud, and Jessica was ordered to undergo extensive psychological treatment. She was also required to pay back the money that had been spent on baby preparations and to compensate the guests who had brought gifts to the shower. The legal proceedings took months, during which David stayed with Sarah and me. He was a shell of his former self, barely eating, barely sleeping. The betrayal had cut him so deep that he questioned everything about his relationship with Jessica, wondering what else she had lied about, what else had been fake. "I keep thinking about all the times she touched her belly and talked to the baby," he told me one night. "All the times she said she could feel him kicking. All the times she made me feel like I was already a father. How do you fake that? How do you lie about something so fundamental?" I didn't have an answer for him. In all my years of medical practice, I had never encountered anything like this. I had seen women with pseudocyesis who genuinely believed they were pregnant, but Jessica's case was different. She had known she wasn't pregnant, had planned the entire deception, and had carried it out with calculated precision. The story made local news, and then went viral on social media. The details were so bizarre, so unbelievable, that people couldn't stop talking about it. David received hundreds of messages from strangers, some offering support, others sharing their own stories of being deceived by partners, and unfortunately, some blaming him for not seeing through the deception. "How did you not know?" was the most common question. How did you live with someone for 7 months and not realize they weren't pregnant? It's a fair question, but one that misses the sophistication of Jessica's deception. She had researched everything, from the physical changes that occur during pregnancy to the emotional and psychological effects. She had modified her behavior, her diet, her sleep patterns, everything to make the lie convincing. More importantly, why would anyone suspect that their wife was faking a pregnancy? It's such an outrageous lie that it wouldn't occur to most people to question it. When someone you love and trust tells you they're carrying your child, you believe them. You don't demand medical proof or conduct investigations. The psychological impact on David was devastating. He had to go through grief counseling, not just for the loss of his marriage, but for the loss of the child he had believed was coming. He had already begun to bond with a baby, had already started thinking of himself as a father. The nursery he had prepared sat empty for months, a constant reminder of the deception. "I dream about him sometimes," David told me. "The baby that never existed. I dream that he's real, that Jessica was telling the truth, and that we're a happy family. Then I wake up and remember that it was all a lie." It took David over a year to begin dating again, and even then, he was suspicious of every woman he met. He would ask detailed questions about their pasts, their families, their medical histories. He couldn't bring himself to trust anyone completely. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," he told me. "I keep waiting to discover that this new person is lying to me too. Jessica seems so normal, so loving. If she could lie about something so fundamental, how do I know anyone else won't?" The incident also affected my own medical practice. Word spread about my role in uncovering the deception, and I began to receive referrals from other doctors who suspected their patients might be suffering from pseudocyesis or other pregnancy-related psychological conditions. It became an unexpected specialty for me, helping to identify and treat women who were experiencing false pregnancies. I also began to research the condition more extensively. I learned that pseudocyesis is more common than most people realize, affecting approximately 1 to 6 out of every 22,000 pregnancies. But Jessica's case was unusual because she had consciously chosen to fake the pregnancy rather than genuinely believing she was pregnant. The legal case dragged on for over a year. Jessica's lawyers argued that she was mentally ill and couldn't be held fully responsible for her actions. David's lawyers argued that the deception was premeditated and that Jessica should be held accountable for the emotional and financial damage she had caused. In the end, Jessica was ordered to pay restitution and to continue psychological treatment. She was also required to stay away from David and to have no contact with him or his family. The court case established a legal precedent for pregnancy fraud, making it easier for future victims to seek justice. But the legal resolution didn't really resolve anything for David. The money couldn't undo the emotional damage, and the court order couldn't erase the 7 months of lies. He had to rebuild his entire understanding of love, trust, and relationships from the ground up. 2 years after the incident, David met Emma Miller, a teacher who had also been through a difficult divorce. They took things very slowly, building trust gradually. David was upfront about what had happened with Jessica, and Emma was understanding and patient with his need for transparency and honesty. They dated for 3 years before getting married, and David insisted on a small, private ceremony. He couldn't bring himself to have another big celebration after what had happened at the baby shower. But their wedding was beautiful in its simplicity, attended only by close family and friends who had supported David through the darkest period of his life. A year after their wedding, Emma became pregnant. David was terrified at first, convinced that somehow this pregnancy would also turn out to be fake. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked detailed questions about every symptom, and requested multiple ultrasounds to confirm that the baby was real. "I know it's irrational," he told me, "but I can't help myself. I keep expecting to wake up and discover that this pregnancy is fake too." But this pregnancy was very real. Emma gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Michael David, named after me and his father. David was in the delivery room when his son was born, and I was there too, having been asked to be present as both a doctor and an uncle. The moment David held his son for the first time, something in him healed. The fear and suspicion that had plagued him for years seemed to melt away as he looked at his child. This was real. This was his son. This was what he had been waiting for. "Thank you," he whispered to me as he held his son. "Thank you for saving me from that lie." As for Jessica, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had continued with her psychological treatment and had moved to another state. She had apparently made progress in understanding her condition and had been working to make amends for the damage she had caused. She sent David a letter on the first anniversary of the incident, apologizing again and expressing her hope that he would find happiness. David never responded to the letter. He had moved on, built a new life, and found real happiness with Sarah and their son. The fake pregnancy had been a nightmare, but it had also taught him the value of truth, honesty, and genuine love. The baby shower incident became a cautionary tale in our family, a reminder that sometimes the people we trust most are capable of the most devastating deceptions. But it also became a story of recovery, of the human capacity to heal and to love again after betrayal. Looking back now, I realized that my medical training had prepared me to recognize the physical signs of Jessica's deception, but it hadn't prepared me for the emotional aftermath. The science of pregnancy is something I understand completely, but the psychology of why someone would fake a pregnancy for 7 months is something I'm still trying to comprehend. What I do know is that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a lie. David's life was shattered when Jessica's deception was revealed, but it was also saved. If I hadn't been there that day, if I hadn't recognized the signs, the lie could have continued indefinitely. Jessica might have faked a miscarriage, or worse, she might have escalated to even more desperate measures to maintain the deception. The fake pregnancy baby shower was the most bizarre and disturbing event I've ever witnessed, but it also reinforced my belief in the importance of truth, trust, and genuine human connection. In the end, David found real love with Emma, and they have the family he always wanted. The truth set him free, even though it hurt him first. And that's why I decided to share this story. Because somewhere out there, there might be another David, another person being deceived by someone they love. And if this story helps even one person recognize the signs of deception, then it was worth telling. The truth is always worth telling, no matter how strange or unbelievable it might seem.